Powerful collaborations, cutting-edge science, and curious minds coming together for a glimpse of the future. Stay tuned as we look at the latest updates on some of the most promising technology projects. Welcome once again. I'm Peter Ballant from Technicon, and today we talk about the SERENA project. SERENA is a European project which has an important role in the future of communications. We've all heard of 5G. It's the imminent communication network which promises speed, coverage, and reliability. But behind the scenes, there is a flurry of activity to make sure that all of this works like it should. For example, the SERENA consortium is working hard to address the power issues and the heterogeneous platform required by the antennas which carry the signals in 5G. Their goal is to develop an architecture which is small, cost-efficient, with robust thermal management schemes. Here to tell us more is Yannis Papananous from project partner Infineon. Infineon is the second largest European semiconductor manufacturer, which gives SERENA quite a bit of muscle in the production arena. Thanks, Yannis, for joining our podcast today.
Thank you. The pleasure is mine.
If I look at the website for SERENA, it sort of indicates to me that the future of technology revolves around having really fast networks to do the things that we want to do, like streaming video or doing virtual reality sessions. So a part of SERENA is meeting these needs, or sort of maybe helping to build the infrastructure that we will need so that we can have our technology in our hands. Can you explain how SERENA is doing this? What part of technology is SERENA addressing to give us what we need?
Yeah, sure. What you said is correct. SERENA is focusing on the infrastructure of future communication networks and applications. So we are not dealing with the applications per se, but rather on providing the necessary infrastructure that will make it possible to have the high data rates and low latency times that are expected from future communication networks. One big part of this infrastructure is what we used to call more than Moore, which means that how you can encapsulate as many electronics as possible in a tiny space. You can imagine that the demand for big high data rates calls for complex hardware, but still you have to be limited on the size of your mobile phone or whatever apparatus you're going to have in the future, which means that you still have to live in this tiny space, but with an increased complexity. So things that now are done in a traditional way, where you have different types of electronic materials, antennas, components, or whatever, spread around a big printed circuit board, have to come into a very, very small footprint, which means that new levels of integration of electronics have to be devised in order to accommodate this. And SERENA is addressing one key issue of this type of integration by providing novel packaging schemes that will allow us to bring as many electronic components as possible in a very limited space.
So really, we have sort of a compound challenge going on here, because we want higher communication speeds. We want better internet. We want faster internet. But we also want things smaller too. And this means not only do you have to design for speed, but you have to design for size too. And the first thing that comes to my mind is, okay, there could be some heating issues going on here. But I think this is part of what you're dealing with in SERENA. Is that right?
Yes, this is correct. One of the critical issues that we are addressing in the SERENA project is the heat dissipation problem. You can understand that as you bring many components in a tiny space, then the heat increases. It's like packing huge number of people in a small room. It's a similar thing. So you need to find ways to dissipate this heat. Otherwise, the solution doesn't work. It doesn't simply work. We don't have a solution. So on one hand, the SERENA project is addressing the problem of bringing all those electronics in the tiny space, which is a challenge by itself. And on the other hand, we have to also address the heat dissipation problem. Otherwise, we do not have a solution. And this is exactly the novelty of the SERENA project. Find a way to bring all the components together and at the same time ensure that you have a viable, proper heat dissipation solution.
And it sounds like, from what I've read, that maybe silicone by itself is not necessarily the solution here.
You mean in terms of hardware, right?
Yes.
Yes. When it comes, we're talking about pure silicon. Yes. When it comes to high data rates, inevitably you need to have high power signal levels, which means that the available electronics to implement the transmitted circuits have to be capable of providing this high power. And traditional silicon, like we know it in a CMOS process or in a silicon germanium process, might not be good enough for this task. So alternative technologies come to cover this gap, and one of these technologies, a prevailing technology, is the gallium nitride technology. The gallium nitride technology is a technology that can give you the extra power required by the new communication systems. But on the other hand, you need to address all the complex processing, signal processing issues, which means that you have to have your silicon chips there in the same system. So we are talking now about a heterogeneous integration, meaning that we need to bring different technologies, different electronic technologies in the same platform, like CMOS chip, a silicon germanium chip, or a gallium nitride chip. And this is one of the tasks of the SERENA project, how to efficiently bring all these type of devices in one common platform.
So it's sort of like a hybrid construction, actually, because you're using different materials.
Exactly. And it is not only the integrated circuits that I'm talking about. I'm talking about a few but critical discrete components that have to be used around the integrated circuits, and of course the antenna integration. Another very, very interesting and critical part of the SERENA project is how to implement the required antennas for a MIMO or a massive MIMO system in the platform that is used to encapsulate the different electronic technologies. So SERENA is moving towards the so-called antenna in package solution. At the end of the day, we're going to have in a tiny module all the necessary electronics and the antennas that are necessary to wirelessly communicate to the external world.
Many times in these types of projects, you have to build something sort of like a proof of concept or a demonstrator. Was that the case with SERENA also? And if you did build something, was it a success, or is there more work to be done?
Yes, indeed, this is correct. Actually, it is quite complex in a sense that there are various levels of implementation. First of all, we need to make sure that the necessary components that will be used in the module are in place. So, the necessary silicon germanium chips, which by the way are provided by Infineon, the necessary gallium nitride chips that are provided by another partner, OMIC, have to be in place, have to be there. So the first part of the SERENA project dealt with the development and the implementation of those components. And this is, of course, very critical, because if you don't have the components, there's no reason to talk about the module. So as we move on with the execution of the SERENA projects, all the necessary components that are needed to construct the module are now in place. And the consortium is happy with the outcome of this effort, because all the components have been fully characterized in the laboratory, with very satisfactory results. So we put them aside and we then focus on developing the module solution that is opted in the framework of the SERENA project. So the next level is to bring everything into the module that has been conceptually designed mainly by Fraunhofer Institute in Berlin, which is another partner in the SERENA project. And as we speak, we are in the phase of developing and constructing the module that will include the components as well as the antennas. So the final demonstrator of the SERENA would actually be the construction and the proof of concept of this type of module integration. But not only this is of course the core element of the SERENA project. But overall, you need to demonstrate a full communication link, which requires a baseband processing unit and all the other necessary components that will be built around the core module of the SERENA project. And this is the final step towards the integration of the whole SERENA.
So your demonstrator is actually real communication from point A to point B using the technologies that you're researching in SERENA.
Yes, we hope that at the end of the day we will manage to do this kind of demonstrator, despite the fact that the core item, the core requirement from the SERENA project is exactly this module development and not the full system. And the novelty, if I may say, of the SERENA project lies on the development of the module. The moment that you have a working module, then it is relatively easy to build up the whole communication link. So the critical issue here is exactly this module development that will provide this type of hybrid integration of different components.
In SERENA, what does success look like for you and perhaps for Infineon? How do you know when you've done a good job or when the project was an effective use of time and the resources that went into it?
Yeah, this is a good question. I would say that at the first level, for Infineon, success of the project is what we have already done, in a sense that we managed to develop a state-of-the-art complex silicon chip. By the way, this particular chip implements the so-called beamforming operation, which is a very critical operation when you are talking about MIMO radios. When I say MIMO radios, I mean radio communications with multiple antennas that operate at the same time. So
Okay.
how to handle these signals is a quite complex story, and Infineon is addressing this problem with implemented silicon germanium chips. So part of the success is already there because we managed to develop, fabricate, and measure this particular beamforming integrated circuit. But then we move at a higher level and we consider a success of the project the moment that we will have a fully functional and operational module that will manage to bring all the components under the same roof, I would say. And this is an ongoing task.
But it sounds like it will happen, right? That's the way it looks.
Yes, we are quite optimistic about this because at least at the simulation level, every measure has been taken to ensure the proper operation of this module. And by the way, this gives me the opportunity to mention a new trend in simulation of complex electronic systems, which is called the multi-physics approach, meaning that traditionally in the electronic industry, you are dealing only with simulators that have to do with the electrical performance of the components. But now that you are building complex systems, as you said earlier, one of the critical issues is the heat dissipation problem. So you have to do heat simulations. You have to do mechanical stability simulations. All these kinds of simulation measures are addressed in a holistic approach in the SERENA project. And partners, the corresponding partners that are dealing with this kind of simulation work have done an excellent job so far to ensure the proper operation of the final module. And moreover, I would say that Fraunhofer has already built a first prototype, which is under testing as we speak. So I'm pretty confident that in the next period of time, we will also have the proof of concept of the final complete SERENA module, including the antennas.
And it sounds like this multi-physics approach is really a way to predict much more accurate results in the end.
It will come a necessity. As we are now talking about complex systems, then it is inevitable that we need to attack these kind of problems, like I said before, in a holistic way.
Many times when I'm speaking to people on these technology projects, there are often surprises that people hadn't counted on. Maybe things that came up from behind and reared their ugly head and had to be dealt with. And usually they're dealt with in kind of an innovative way and in a learning way. So was there anything like this in SERENA that you could say, wow, we didn't see that coming?
I wouldn't say that in a sense that we have not yet finished with the building of the module. So yes, the moment that you test the real thing, then all these kind of problems emerge. But having a complete look in the problem and a meticulous approach to all issues that have to do with this type of heterogeneous integration. Indeed, we have addressed early in the development of our solution many issues, especially when it came to the thermal dissipation problem, which is one of the key challenges in the SERENA project.
What happens when SERENA ends? I mean, your team is doing a lot of work, a lot of research, and perhaps discovering new things. What happens to these technologies or these methods that you work on? Logically, it would seem like maybe SERENA 2 would carry on and pick up where you left off, but are these technologies then shifted into business or the industrial sector and further developed, or how does that work? Or do you publish your results somewhere and then these results can be used for future research and for future development?
Yeah, we can move towards both directions, let's say the academic approach and the industrial approach, meaning that, of course, we need to publish. This is a publicly funded project, so the outcome of this research has to be publicly available. So we are taking every measure to make sure that the scientific community will have access to our results. And on the other hand, the companies involved in this project will benefit from the outcome of this research and hopefully will carry on this prototype development towards a sustainable product. The packaging issue is one of the most critical issues in the electronic business today, exactly for the reasons we discussed earlier. The complexity of the problems need a new view on the integration problem. So traditionally, you had your IC and all you cared about is how to encapsulate this IC and then you have your product. So this is not the case anymore. You do not have a single packaged integrated circuit. You must have a complete packaged module that will contain numerous components. So this is exactly the challenge. Various companies and universities have proposed solutions in the past and in the present. SERENA is one of the solutions that we hope to be in the state of the art or even beyond the state of the art. So hopefully the outcome of this project can be used as the basis for either a continuation of this packaging effort in a new research project in the future, and definitely as the basis for producing successful products by companies for example, like Infineon.
Yeah, that's excellent. And that's exactly the goal of the European Union when they invest in these projects, is to achieve these kind of outcomes. So we can consider it a success just from what you've told me. SERENA is one of these projects where it may not necessarily be so clear for everyone to understand what you're doing, but at the same time, it's required. I mean, if we intend to move at a rapid pace with technology, we need you doing what you're doing in science. We're glad that you're there and doing this, and thanks for your contribution to science in that way. And I especially want to say thank you for taking a little bit of time today to help us understand a little bit better what SERENA is trying to do.
Thank you very much, Peter. Thanks.
For more information about SERENA, visit serena-h2020.eu. This podcast has been brought to you by Technicon. This project has received funding from the European Union's Horizon 2020 Research and Innovation Program under Grant Agreement number 779305.